Out here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of the guitarist, engineer, producer and songwriter. It's all the way from LA. It is Scrote, who I spoke to very recently to find out more about life, love and poetry. Recently, 2022, had an amazing tour celebrating the music of David Bowie and has another particular 2 months lined up at the end of 2023, October into November, featuring such musicians as Adrian Belew on guitar and also Pete Murphy on vocals and lots of other musicians as well, which you're going to find out much more about in this interview. So without any more further chat, let's get down to it. So after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, which gets edited out, to be honest, we then get down to that exciting subject that was the early formative years, and then much more about Scrote's life and music. You're going to love it. Anyway, sit back, relax, enjoy.
Well, I did, and that was at 16. So it's funny, I was just writing about it for something coming up, and I had just started. I barely played guitar, and my mom's a professional singer, not anymore, but was a professional singer, very learned and everything. And so I grew up playing some classical piano and writing songs, but I was more into sports. But then at 16, I switched over, picked up a guitar and had a sort of natural affinity to it and writing things. And my mom having a jazz background, I naturally was inclined to go into harmony and jazz kind of stuff. And about 2 months after I started playing guitar, a trumpet player from New York City who was playing with a young John Scofield had a grant to a national grant. It's called an NEA grant, National Endowment of Arts here in the United States, to come teach at my high school. My high school is a very musically strong, prominent school outside of Chicago. And he came in, a trumpet player, and he took me under his wing. And since I'd only been playing a couple of months, and he didn't play guitar, said, "Oh, well, I can teach you music, and I'll give you some guitar notes from John Scofield, and you can pull some things from that." So I was kind of on my own as far as the guitar itself at first, but extremely advanced theory right away. And I took in a record, and we went record shopping, first real record shopping, got a bunch of jazz records. Then I came back one time, I go, "Well, what do you think of this?" And it was the first Van Halen record.
Right.
And I played him, and he heard Eddie Van Halen, and he said, "Well, that's, he's a good player. Not very interesting note choices." And I thought, note choices, wow, what an interesting think about note choices, because you hear all the acrobatic guitar and the groove. Eddie Van has a great groove and everything. And he goes, "So here, let me play you this." And he heard it on Birds of Fire, which is the first record by Mahavishnu Orchestra, guitar player named John McLaughlin. Yes. And I listened it was the middle of the day, and as it was playing, I was kind of hallucinating in animation. A wife beating her husband over the head with a rolling pin in her kitchen. And I was just kind of going into this moment, and then the song got done, and he said, "What'd you think of that?" After me playing on Van Halen. And I turned to him and I said, "I want to play the guitar the rest of my life, and I want to play just like that."
Yes. Well, what was that track called again? Because I was desperately trying to write it down.
Birds of Fire.
Birds of Fire. Do check it out. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. John McLaughlin just came out of Miles Davis Electric Band, and he had this wild orchestra, and they tried to put him on tour opening for the Monkees. So, which was crazy, and all these bands, but the music is really intense, and I heard it as a mix of beauty and evil.
Yes.
And I thought that's perfection, because you kind of can't have one without the other to really go to a certain place, you know.
Yes. It's kind of interesting because I always remember Robert Fripp talking. I think it was around that time when Bowie and Tony Visconti invited him over to Berlin, the Hansel Studios, and he talked about playing some rock and roll lick, and he said, you know when I play a rock and roll lick, because it feels like you've just been fucked. It was a bit like, oh, okay, Robert.
That. To me, it's all about tension and release. That's a classic. I went to a music school, University of North Texas, studying bebop and experimental composition, and it always comes around to tension and release to me. And so, a matter of means of how you're getting there. It could be through harmonic tension and then release, or it could be dynamics, or it could be by technique, dramatic technique, and then laying back. But it's always that push pull, and that's also what I think of that beauty and evil. If you have this kind of push pull, it's the most fast.
Because I to be honest, I never got that kind of Van Halen sort of thing, because I was a bit more. I don't know. I remember Lemmy from Motorhead talking about, and he had a similar idea. It's all very dexterous, but where's that kind of oomph to it, like Ace of Spades or Bomber or Overkill? You hear that, and there's a lot going on in there. There's a lifetime's of work, but there's something quite driven. And the same with Jimi Hendrix, hearing Purple Haze or Hey Joe, or any of those songs. It just has. And then I was an indie kid in the 80s, so you heard Johnny Marr and his guitar work, and again it was like, this is kind of, there's something quite deep about it. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think it's personal, and it's very much working out the person. And if the person's got something, has depth within them that they're kind of seeking, and they through their music it comes through, and it's honest. And then Van Halen, I think it's fun stuff, and I get it in a certain way, but and I enjoy it, but it's never really been an influence on me as a guitar player, not in any significant way. No. But I'm influenced by jazz people and noise, and that's really what led me to Bowie. That's I try to think about when he first came on my radar, and I remember Golden Years and Fame being on the radio, and I was really, as a kid, I was just talking to my wife about this. I was really into Earth, Wind, and Fire as far as pop acts. Earth, Wind, and Fire, Jackson 5, Stevie Wonder is my ultimate favorite musician, and stuff like that. And then I'd hear that kind of stuff, R&B and stuff like that on the radio. And then eventually, and I listen to pop radio, I like that. And then Fame and Golden Years started turning up, and I just thought it was the weirdest, creepiest stuff. I couldn't kind of get my head around it. I just like, what the, I don't know what's going on here. I'm a kid. It's like, wow. And then
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it was just kind of, I just thought it was just haunting, very haunting, and but attractive, but haunting. I just couldn't figure out what I thought of it. And then I fast forward to Let's Dance coming out, and think, okay, yeah, all right, okay, yeah, no, all right. I'm in jazz school and all that. Like, yeah, okay, kind of that. And then a girl I was dating gave me classic mixtape, had XTC and all this stuff on it.
My God, she must have loved you, mustn't she? Doing a mixtape in those days is a definite sign
of
they
romance. Were great. Yeah, and they got into Life on Mars, and Oh You Pretty Things were on there, and I was like, wait a minute, who's that? What is that? There's like David Bowie. I'm like, no, wait a minute, David Bowie. And Let's Dance is kind of everywhere. I'm like, no, who's these songs? She goes, oh, that's David Bowie. I'm like, wait a minute, how can that be? It doesn't sound anything. Wait, what? And then I realized, and I put Fame in and Golden Years era, and I'm like, well, what's going on here? Who is this guy? You know, and then I got into Scary Monsters from there. And then it kind of all opened up. I got into
Yes.
Heroes, like, oh, whoa, what's going on? And at that point, I was in college and, like I say, jazz and experimental music. So I never really saw a place in pop music for me as a guitar player, even as a composer, really, until Bowie and hearing all the guitar players, Adrian and Fripp and all those guys. And then you have Carlos R&B in there and
Yes.
funk. Like, well, I can relate to that. So it all just spoke to me. I'm like, oh, that's everything that I like and what I am.
Yes. Well,
And
an interesting mix. I mean, just briefly, I mean, so your childhood, your mum was obviously, the musical one in the family. Did your dad have
yeah.
any influence on you, or were you more of a sporting guy up to the age of 16?
Yeah, I was heavily into sports. Figured I would be a professional football player. Professional running back. Loved
We
it.
all want to do that, didn't
Yeah,
we?
I was going to retire and buy the Miami Dolphins. Um, I went through growing up like wanting to be an architect, studying that. I want to be a doctor, studying that. I went through all the phases, and eventually I was like into football. But by the time I got through high school, I was playing all sports year round. I was so beat up. I had broken fingers multiple times. Because I'm pretty fearless and foolish in that way, and had my vertebrae cracked. So I was almost paralyzed from the shoulders down. So that took out football, and that's what got me to play guitar. So
Right. Yes.
I was actually cooked. I had to be very careful. I had to reconstruct a wrist by my senior year. And then I got kicked off the football team for calling out a coach who was racist and just for not
Yes.
getting along. And it's kicked off. And I thought, okay, I'm out of here. I'm out of all this stuff. And I just started playing guitar. I looked over at the musicians in the school, and they were throwing things and they're rebellious. And I thought, yeah, I want to be with those guys.
Yes, I think you made a wise choice. Otherwise, you'd be in a wheelchair at the moment with arthritis.
Yeah, I would.
So what year did you hit 16? What was just a rough kind of cultural, in my brain. So when did you hit 16?
That's late 70s.
Right. So
Yeah,
you were
end
born.
of the 70s.
Oh, okay then. So you were born about 1963, 65?
Yeah,
Right.
63. Yeah.
So what was your first gig you went to? What was the first concert? Which wasn't a jazz one? You probably went to a jazz one.
Yeah. What I remember, oddly enough, this makes a whole lot of sense, is I was really into Chicago, the band Chicago.
Yes.
I was in the Earth, Wind, and Fire. So I liked horns and big sounds and complex sounds and everything, and harmonies right out of the gate. And so I like Earth, Wind, and Fire. Love them. And Stevie, like I said, Stevie Wonder and Chicago. And I think the first concert I went to was Chicago, and the opening act was the Steve Martin, comedian.
Nice. Yes, he's a sort of virtuoso, isn't he?
So he had a hit single called King Tut. I don't know if you remember that. It's this goofy single. And so he was out on opening for the band Chicago. So I went to that. And the next one I remember going to, of all bands, was Rush, because Rush had this undercurrent of popularity.
Yeah.
And I was kind of checking them out. I didn't know how much I was into them, but was checking them out. So that was the first like straight up rock concert I went to.
Yeah. So when you were going through the, because it's quite, it's quite interesting, slightly unusual, because normally people at that age get very tribal, they get very committed, and they're part of a kind of little musical kind of zeitgeisty moment, aren't they? Especially when you're 16, 18, and at that time there was like, I don't know, in the UK we had the goth scene, where then we had that kind of, I suppose, new wave electronic scene. There was the indie pop scene with bands like the Smiths. You sort of put your sort of, masks Your flags to the mast, something like that. You know, you committed to something, didn't you? You dressed it, you looked it, you sort of imitated, you had the posters on the wall, but you didn't have that kind of 80s period, did you? It didn't sound like if you went for
80s period, I did. So growing up, I forgot to notice, my dad's an engineer, a civil engineer. So he's very analytical, which I think influenced me as a producer. So I spent half my time producing and performing. And but growing up, I was focused on sports. So I listened to the radio, and and I had some posters on the wall, but really I was more R&B oriented. And for some reason, I was really, it's my mom really, attracted to harmony, rich harmony and jazz harmony and all that. But also, as my mom would attest, I always had a fascination with noise, sheer noise. Like I would make feedback multi-track recordings. So when it came to music school, my interest went into those areas. And as the 80s came on, the 80s bringing synthesizers and Eno and Bowie and new wave, it was all about creativity and inventiveness. I was right there. I remember hearing King Crimson for the first time, the Discipline album. I was walking in a record store and I heard something, the same kind of effect that Bowie had years earlier. It's like, man, what is that? That's really strange. And they used to put records up at the counter, whatever was playing. Yeah. And I saw this red record. It was Discipline, King Crimson. I thought, wow, I don't know what to think about that. And then about a week later, I was checking out Talking Heads, Remain in Light, and the solo on the Great Curve.
Oh, yes. That's
Adrian Belew. I was in jazz school and I was trying to find my way in pop music. Not heavily. I was just saying, how would I fit in this world? And I heard that and I'm like, that's it. Because I was studying Edgar Varese and Stravinsky and all this. So, the use of noise. So here's this guitar player wailing just sounds and curving and bopping all over. The notes are bending and everything. I'm like, wow, that is it. That's me. That's what I want to hear against a beat. Yes. And then quickly I realized, well, who's that? Adrian Belew. Oh, wait a minute. I think that guy's in that other record, King Crimson. Then I started to get on the Adrian Belew thing. Oh, wait a minute. He played with David Bowie. Wait a minute, what's going on here?
Yes.
So Adrian's has been a huge gateway for me.
Yes, well, absolutely. Did you, at that stage, did you then sort of start looking or listening to did you sort of focus much more on that? Or did you start listening to those bands like, I don't know, there was Sonic Youth, Big Black, the Butthole Surfers.
Oh, yeah.
Bands like that who were sort of getting into sort of a lot more noise and feedback and,
The
form of a song was definitely going to be changed quite radically, and sort of the composition as well.
Isersted's New Button, all that stuff. Yeah, that I saw all that coming up and coming out. And within, and we were I didn't have a particular group. I had one friend who was kind of a cohort that was diving into that stuff heavily and discovering it and sharing with him. But there wasn't a scene so much around it because I was at jazz school in North Texas. And then within the jazz schools, I was in the experimental music department. And so we're totally on the fringe really with that. But, it was all coming out and we were the part of the underground of spreading the tapes and everything, Bauhaus. I remember Bauhaus coming up and starting,
Yes.
All of that. Just, hey, check this out. And it being so down to earth and natural and just people literally handing music over to each other.
Yeah.
And that's
So that was your kind of the 80s was kind of much more at college because talking about the influence of people like Bowie. I mean, I sort of found it interesting because his 60s work is pretty hit and miss, mostly quite miss, really, isn't it? Kind of playing with different lineups and bands and sort of going from sort of straight R&B to then some folk kind of experience and a few little novelty things and sort of sounded like Anthony Newley, and it was kind of like
Sure.
it was the sort of the decade where the 70s came along and then things started to shift. I suppose I put it down to the fact that there was kind of Angie Bowie came on the scene who helped sort of direct him, and then there was Tony DeFries, this manager, and then Mick Ronson also appeared as well, and then the Spiders, and there was this kind of thing that it was like the planets started to line up. But before then, there was no way you could have listened to any of that material that he recorded in the 60s and thought, God, I can see this kid's going to go far. Because I always thought it was strange that some of the stuff he was releasing at the same time, there was, like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Doors, Jefferson Airplane, the Kinks, all, Hendrix, all these amazing bands. And Bowie would come out with some album that you just thought, where does that, that's just like,
what is that? That makes no sense.
You don't want to be cruel, but you think, why did you bother? I mean, we just got Sgt. Pepper, we just got Break On Through, we got, I don't know, Electric Ladyland, and there's this kind of rather folky, weirdy thing that's just sounded a bit like Anthony Newley. And so it was kind of interesting. But it was this kind of, for me, it was that kind of moment. I mean, perseverance, but there was definitely a kind of like, gosh, you've got these kind of people who've sort of started to sort of shift this kind of energy into something that is starting to be quite special. But I would have never betted more than £10 that he was going to make it in the 60s as this kind of...
I had to kind of backwards learn all that stuff. So I was so heavily into sports, and I remember, playing piano, and I remember writing songs, which looking back, I'm like, why was I writing songs? I write all this stuff. I was into Chopin and figure out things, but my focus was on sports. And so I wasn't thinking about that at all. I didn't really even put the Beatles together until John Lennon was shot. I remember that night I was told, and I thought, I had a girlfriend and she was a big Beatle freak, and I didn't think anything of it. And I thought, oh, she's going to be really upset. And then I turned on the radio and I started hearing all the different Beatles. And I thought, same thing, like, this is the same band? I never knew that was the same. And I stayed up all night hearing it and going, oh, wow. And then I've been playing guitar like that was right at the beginning of me playing guitar. So I've been a few months in, and I hadn't even really put the Beatles together. So
yes, because obviously because you were talking about that kind of your funk, your sort of natural kind of gravitation to that funk world. But then Bowie was like, when he would talk about his, getting Mick Ronson, he wanted a Jeff Beck, didn't he? He'd often say this,
right.
Obviously, Jeff Beck was like, I'm not going to go and play for David Bowie, not in 1972, because he's Jeff Beck and Bowie was nothing. So, it was kind of interesting. So that was much more of a blues rock kind of vibe than people like Carlos Alomar. Did you suddenly have to sort of go back and discover the world of Ronson and Beck and people like that and sort of...
I did, actually, and that was real late. Well, Jeff Beck I got turned on to right away, Blow by Blow record, pretty early on, because he was already Jeff Beck, and so starting guitar and being electric, specifically an electric guitarist more than just a general guitar player. Of course, I play acoustic and some classical play stuff, but I'm, very electric guitar centric. And so Jeff Beck was a natural after discovering John McLaughlin in there. That was one of the first records I got right after that, Birds of Fire. And so, but Jeff Beck, that record, Blow by Blow, is a funk record. And so is the next Jeff Beck record after that, Wired.
Right.
Those are all funk guys. And so, and thinking about it now, what I tell everyone in celebrating David Bowie, I'm always looking for bass and drums who are funk and groove oriented, because I hear David Bowie as an R&B artist, even in rock days, because of his phrasing and the way a lot of the players play the rock, it's groovy. It's got a
Yes.
groove to it in a different way. So I've always Angela Moore from Fishbone. We've done a lot of work together. We've talked about Bowie in that context. We both hear Bowie as R&B and soul artist, no matter what he's doing.
Yeah.
We hear that. We hear it through that lens. And so, yeah, even Bowie now, I'm always trying to line that up. It's groovy.
Well, I suppose you had on rhythm section, you had Woody Woodmansey and Trevor Bolder in those quite early period, and then you sort of went into other people like Dennis Davis as well.
Dennis Davis, huge,
who really
unsung hero.
You know, and that period, especially the Low album, and there's a track called "Be My Wife," which I still think has just got one of the most amazing sounds and quality, but it is again you know, it has got that groove, it has got that funk. And actually I always think Station to Station again is another one of those albums, because it's got George Murray on bass, hasn't it? But again, it kind of builds, it has that kind of it's got a groove to it, basically.
I think Bowie was the same way. He wanted to hear something groovy, you know, in whatever way you can get there, you know, and you can dress it up any other way. And I think that's really kind of what draws me to him most. And I hear as the glue, it's like something, it's flowing, it's grooving, it's funky, and then it's got a bunch of noise and melody.
Yes. Well, I think he's,
you're mixing all that up.
Well, I think sometimes, you had the Earl Slick guitarist, or you had, Fripp, or you had various other people, Reeves, Gabriel's as well. So there was, I suppose
Earl's very groovy player.
Yes.
He's got a good groove,
Well, I know he loves Keith Richards quite a lot, doesn't he? So he's, Keith is his.
There you go. Yeah.
There is his man. So just with your own sort of projection or your direction, then sort of that's the kind of 80s. Then what happens to you in the kind of the 90s and that next period for your sort of musical direction and world?
Well, for me, let's say I moved out of college into San Francisco, and lo and behold, there's a whole scene going on called thrash funk. I don't know if you know about that. And that's kind of the Red Hot Chili Peppers thing and everything. Right. And so there's a whole bunch of bands like that. So I played in some stuff like that. And so, making my own recordings and records and experimental stuff along the way. And, keeping an eye on Bowie, always see what's he turning up. Yes. So for me, that was kind of just that, kind of exploring all those things, living into and exploring in popular music and underground, kind of the same thing, but more the 90s, more in a professional way. So yes. I had my own group touring US and Europe multiple times and things like that. And then jumping up with other artists. So it's just kind of coming out, into the professional world. So that's how I kind of saw the whole thing. But I was really into, I didn't actually play I played in rocking bands, the rock, but I didn't play in a rock band.
Right.
Really until I moved to LA in the 2000s, like a straight up rock band. And I was into Tin Machine. I'm a rare Tin Machine fan. So I loved Reeves and all that stuff. And I saw them live 3 times and checked them out. Then when Bowie got into the drum and bass, I was already into that kind of drum and bass scene.
Yes, absolutely.
And doing things. So seeing him jump on, he was kind of picked up on the later side of it. So I took that in. I met Bowie in, I think, 97, maybe.
That was around the time of Earthling, wasn't it? In 97, just before he did Hours.
Yeah, maybe it was earlier than that, because it was when did Tin Machine stop? When was there?
So Tin Machine would have been 1990, 91, I think. Tin Machine was they kind of started at that period of the sort of late 80s.
I think they're like 89, the first record come out. Maybe they went for a few years, 92, 93.
Yes.
So I met Bowie in that period at a private party in San Francisco, which I didn't know I was going to meet him. So that was a interesting thing. Yeah, it was my birthday, and somebody invited me, said, "I have a birthday present. Go down to this club, and you have to be on the guest list. And have an invite. I'm sending them over now." So I went to the club. I had no idea what was going on. Went in. It's about 100 people, and it was Tin Machine playing. And private party, open bar, open food and everything. And then they played. I'm like, wow, what do you know? And it's a small club. And at the end, Reeves came out, and I started talking to Reeves. And there's just a few of us. And I look, and I'd played at this club myself. And I look over while I'm talking to Reeves, and about 30 yards away, I see Bowie coming from backstage, which is under the stage. So I see the back of him walking up the steps, and I'm talking with this few people, and I think, oh, well, there's David Bowie over there coming up the steps. And then he turns around and he starts coming. I go, oh, David Bowie's walking right towards me. They're like, holy shit, he's coming up to here. And it never occurred to me that would happen, even though it was a small little setup. I'm like, oh, so introduce ourselves, and just hung out and people chatting. And right away I thought, oh, I'm gonna not talk a lot here. I'm just gonna take this in.
Well, absolutely. No, this is probably a good idea. Well, it's interesting because I sort of thought Tin Machine were quite good, and I quite like both of their albums, and I especially like the second one. I've done an interview with both Hunt and Tony separately over the last couple of years, and they're such nice guys, and I mean, amazing players. I mean, fantastic their backstory, their father, Soupy Sales, which was, this famous comedian and presenter, and then their work with people like, because they were with Todd, weren't they? Rundgren, very early.
Rundgren and Iggy Pop.
And then obviously Lust for Life, working with David Bowie, doing that kind of period and the best songs. And
speaking of drummer, Hunt, I love Hunt's playing, because Hunt is a very groovy drummer.
He's a jazz drummer. He grew up with all the jazz guys, and that's how he sort of.
I'm a big fan. Yeah. He's a nut. He's crazy, but I love it.
Yes, well, I know. I mean, I did an interview on Zoom. I could see his place was quite interesting. So, whereas Tony's place was a bit quiet and a bit more spacious and nice, but it was kind of amazing seeing him. But again, I think as an artist, Bowie had done that kind of 70s. He did 10 albums in basically 10 years. He produced several albums, Lou Reed, Iggy Pop. Okay, the Lou Reed one was with, Mick Ronson as well. So that helped a lot. He did various world tours. He did various other different characters and different shows. And he also had, relationship children, relocated several times, did several films as well. So he did a lot in that period. So I kind of think that he keeps that energy going, because then he obviously does Let's Dance. He does another couple of albums, which Tonight and Never Let Me Down, which aren't that amazing. I mean, he's suddenly.
I like Tonight.
I mean,
I like Tonight a lot.
I think it was a lot to do with the producer and the production and that kind of sound that they got, which wasn't quite right. But he did 2 massive world tours, which were fantastic, and I think. To sort of not just give it all up and think I've had it, but to think, right, I'm going to have Tin Machine. I think it's just an amazing move. I sort of think, what the hell, and he did Labyrinth as well and various other films.
It's Bowie. It's just Bowie. I mean, it seems if you look at it, the 80s, he was as busy as he was in the 70s.
Yeah.
I mean, he did so much stuff,
So that was quite amazing. And then, in the 90s, he kind of, falls in love and gets this, relationship, which is hugely important. And then he sort of starts with Black Tie, White Noise, and then that kind of experimental sound with, a bit of drum and bass. And he has this kind of
I like
strange
that.
one.
Black Tie, White Noise too.
Yes. So and then Outside, which has had that strange narrative. And I think, it's a great period, so I don't knock it at all. I think it's just amazing that I've interviewed a lot of musicians, and mostly they just go, I can't take it anymore. I want to give it up. Whereas he does keep going all the time, and that is quite bonkers and bizarre. And I've spoke to a lot of people who've worked with him over those years in different bands, and it's like constructing another band for another album and bringing that all together, and the risk that must take of thinking, there's these random people, and now I'm going to put them together, and we're going to try and make an album. Is quite.
I can relate that to myself right now, because when I do a celebrated David Bowie tour, every time I rethink the ensemble, and all the business people are like, what are you doing? It's going so well. Like, yeah, but we want to refocus and keep it fresh, and want to get in this great players and this and that, and some stay and some come back, some go, and it's like, and it, the established side of everything, business side, people let me do whatever I want to do. It's my entity, but I do see them go, a panic.
Yes,
like,
panic. Yes.
Don't mess with success. Like, yeah, but the success is a bigger thing. It's being fresh and innovative, and I played with this exciting player, this young guy. I met the other day, this incredible player. I think he's available for this date. Let's get him in as a guest. And
yes,
Adrian said a couple times to me, he was like, man, you are the perfect guy to do this, because you think like David. You're stirring up. You're not losing sight of what's important, but you're keeping fresh, and you're going, and you're motivated by the music and that.
So what was the kind of, because, obviously it was a traumatic moment when, we found out that he passed in 2016. So up to then, you hadn't sort of had a Bowie band, but then after 2016, is this when you started working on these projects of sort of putting bands together, celebrating the music? How does that work, or how did that happen?
I was in LA, and I was working and doing different things, and there's a period around the 2010. So looking back and experience it all, the way I went through it was, and I think there's a common agreement to this, there was a moment where all the tech was coming in so heavy, the innovations with studios, tours were slowing down, and the record budgets were disappearing.
Yes.
At one point, I was working on like 5 records at a time, producing, and I wasn't playing live as much, which was the first time I kind of threw off balance that way, because usually I'm pretty divided equally between playing live. And so I was making records heavily. I started seeing the budgets drop, and I started seeing artists' money for tours drop. Artists were going out solo or duo and all that. And so I'm in the middle of LA, and I'm seeing all these really high-end players running around with nothing to do. I mean, guys from McCartney's band, Sting's band, the whole Beck, everybody, the creme de la creme of the players. And I, by kind of a fluke, I was working on a record of my own, and I was thinking of working with this African based band. And I thought, well, this punk record, I was talking to them, I go, it'd be really cool to do this African beat with my punky stuff. let's do a show together, and how about that? And they're like, yeah, okay, that'd be great. And then I got a call from venue if I wanted to do something within a few days. It was like a Wednesday, and on Sunday. And I said, okay, hold on. And I called the leader of this Afro beat group, and I said, hey, why don't we get together and just jam? And I'll bring a couple of my tunes, and we don't have to rehearse or anything, and we could do something kind of like Remain in Light. Maybe we can pick a couple of grooves out there, and we'll just kind of experiment with them.
Yeah.
And then it got to, within a few days, it got to, why don't we just play that album, Remain in Light? Like, yes. Okay. Then that's okay. That should be a thing. Okay. And so we get it. And then the day of, I realized, well, then we worked out like backing vocals, and they're kind of like, wait, who's doing the lead vocal? They're like, you are. Like, I am singing David Byrne. That's no easy task. And so it's like, well, we're in deep in it, whatever. Okay. So I printed all the lyrics and just went for it. And I know the music really well. So like, okay. So I was able to get through it, and we had a good time.
Oh, you're just frozen again. Wait a minute. Yes, sorry. You just mentioned.
Okay. Yeah. So I happened to be in another state, and I recognized that a whole bunch of us who did the Remain in the Light in Los Angeles were in Dallas at the same time. So we did it down there, and it started to being a thing. And then I was like, thought, okay, maybe we do Bowie Berlin trilogy. We could do it at the jazz club here. And let's see, we'll take it and we'll do 4 songs from each record, and we'll tie them together with improv, with like structured improv. And it's kind of, and so we did that. The place was packed, went crazy. And then I thought, then I'm seeing all these players still around, and they're playing and everything. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to start doing these shows. So we started doing shows of catalogs. Fela Kuti, did night of Fela Kuti music. We started doing Miles Davis Electric Period with guys who played with Miles and Chick Corea. So it was a heavy playing situation. And we'd give the money to charity. And that went on for 2-3 years, and it picked up steam, and people were talking about it in other cities, and it became a sort of a thing. And then it got so busy, I decided, I'm going to take a year off. I need a break from this. I went and toured out US and Europe with my own records. And when I came back, I was working. I talked to Tim Lefebvre, who was a bass player on Black Star. We had been playing a lot together. And I thought, hey, I've got a night January 10th at the Blue Whale Jazz Club here in LA. A night. Do you want to do Berlin Trilogy music that night? And he goes, hey, I'm in London right now. And he goes, funny you called, because I just walked into Mojo Magazine offices, and they were watching us on YouTube play Berlin Trilogy at that club the year before. So that's weird. And he goes, yeah, well, we're going to I go, I got this January 10th. And he goes, well, that Bowie record, I knew that he was working on that. That was kind of, not known, but I knew who was working on that. He said, that's coming out January 8th. So let's not do Berlin Trilogy music on the 10th, because I don't know what's going to happen with that record. Let's do something else. Said, okay, we'll figure it out. So I go home. I was in a car. I get to where I was going in Houston. I look up my laptop, and there's a video for Black Star. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. This was in November of 2015. And I called him back and told him, I said, yeah, I just saw the new Bowie video when I got to where I was going. There's a moment he lifts a Bible up, and I could swear he's saying goodbye. How is he okay? And he's like, oh, he seemed fine to me. He's older and everything, but he's good spirits. I'm like, yeah, it's very weird and everything. And so, well, I'll get in touch. And so January 10th comes around. I wrote a bunch of music for the night, and we were playing the night it was announced he passed away. We were on stage, Me and Tim Lefebvre, Mark Juliana, who played on Black Star, was there. And on our break, that news broke. We heard together. And then, it was like just everybody was in shock. We had to play another set. We played another set. And then on the way out, I heard Under Pressure, which you don't in a jazz club. And I just thought, boy, everything's just changed. I don't know. And I got home and I heard on the radio, I was packing. I had to leave town the next morning. And I heard they go, yeah, Bowie had 26 studio albums. I thought, 26 studio albums he did? I wonder how many I have. And I looked and I had 23.
Wow. Yes.
I go, okay. And then I left, and then immediately I started getting notes like, hey, man, you should do one of your shows, charity shows, so we can all get together and play Bowie music. And I thought, man, well, that's a little too close to home at the moment, let me sit on that idea. So people kept asking. And then after I thought about it for a week, and then I thought, well, I'll call Tim, see what Tim thinks. And he said, I'm all in. And then I called Gary Oldman because we had done a bunch of things together. Yes. I didn't know his relationship with David. I didn't even know. I was just asking him because we'd worked together. And he told me, and I thought, oh, well, sorry, sorry to bother you. Don't worry about it. And he said, no, I'm all in. Let's do something. So it really started with me, Gary Oldman, and Tim Lefebvre. Then put together, 70 songs, or 40 songs, 41 songs I picked, 70 musicians coming and going. Like Gary Oldman and you and McGregor and Seal and Angelo Moore from Fishbone. And it was really kind of a community thing for artists and pro musicians in LA just to kind of process his death. So it was about 4 weeks later. And that was it. We raised $10,000 at this small venue, Roxy Theater. It was sold out. And it was a really magical night. And everyone was emotionally on the same page, and hearing and playing the music, it just was something really unique. Yes. And that was going to be it. But by the time I got home around 3 a.m., it went viral around the world. And thought, okay, I don't know. I was getting invites to do it elsewhere. And I talked to Gary Oldman and said, he's like, well, let's take it all over. And I said, hold on. So sat on the idea, eventually decided to do an encore version in San Francisco since I used to live there. Same thing happened, and then decided, okay, talked to Gary, and we're like, let's expand. And I thought, if Adrian Belew is in, and I didn't know Adrian at the time, I'd met him a couple of times, said, you know what, I want to reach out to Adrian Belew. If Adrian Belew's in, I'm in. We'll do it. But and I wrote Adrian cold call, and he said, yes, I'm in. Of course, I love David, and let's do it. And then I wrote the estate. I knew it was going to be big. I wrote the estate, and I want to make sure they were okay with it. And they said they were okay with it. And then I made a plan. I thought, if nothing else, this is a way to give closure to fans around the world. And any excess we'll give to charity. We'll raise money along the way.
Yes.
And, and then all former Bowie band members from all eras start calling and trying to work them in, and stars from around the world. Yeah.
Has that been the case then, that since 2016 you've been one of the people sort of holding the baton for these kind of, quite a few.
It's we went. That was gonna. So like the first night, I thought the second night was gonna be it, and then I thought this big 2017 world tour, that was gonna be it. Always getting more and more inquiry. They're like, okay, well, let me rethink it. And then some other guys the Bowie alum, they wanted to go run with it. I'm like, you guys go run with it. And then they couldn't get it off the ground. But at that point, I thought, okay, well, I'll keep doing it and I'll invite them back. Again, as long as Adrian's there, like, because Adrian's a sincere, straight up fellow, like he's a rock, and
Yes.
musically and personally. So, if Adrian's there, okay. So we did 2018, and then some of the alumni kind of went off and did an offshoot, same kind of concept and everything. And they went one direction. Then that was kind of the sideman band, and then all the kind of the artists who had like Adrian, Angela Moore, and others who had their own career as an artist kind of went with me. And so that went for a while, and then COVID hit, and then we'd done dates with Todd Rundgren in Iceland, and then we went to South America, and then Todd wanted to do the U.S. I was the whole time I was like, well, that'll be it. We'll do Iceland and South America, then I'm out.
Yes, absolutely.
And then Todd calls and goes, let's do the U.S. I'm like, well, I cannot turn down Todd Rundgren in the U.S. He's such a huge legend over here. In a similar way.
So doing that sort of 2017, this is when you had people like, there was Mike Garson, there was Jerry Leonard, there was Carmen as well, wasn't there, Angelo? I mean, there's quite a lot of players who had been with Bowie and had sort of that kind of, also that kind of...
Yeah, that was big. Brought them all on. We already were an existing show, so bringing them on, and that was a struggle because they wanted to do what they did with Bowie, and our show is specifically, we're not trying to be Bowie or do what Bowie did. We have our own thing we're looking at,
Yes.
Way of presenting it and performing it. So that was a struggle. So those guys were on for 2017 and 2018. It wasn't until end of 2018, 2019 they kind of went their own way, and then
was that quite an interesting dynamic? Was there quite some interesting kind of conversations you had to say, look, they had their bit of an agenda? I mean, let's face it, we've all had these kind of conversations where you're thinking, guys, this is let's listen, let's try and work something out. Was there some quite animated moments?
Oh boy, there was right at the beginning, even in 2017. But we came together, and to me, it was the ship. It was already built, and that's what kept it together. You know what I mean? Even though people were coming on, and there were other people trying to do other stuff. So everyone was trying to do their own version. And I was like, well, that's cool. Go do it. That's more power to you. That's fine. I'm sticking with this. This works. And so people to do version. The only point of contention was, okay, wait a minute, you're taking all our wording, you're selling your thing as if it was our thing. That's not cool. Go do your thing. All the power to you. You have all the right. I encourage you. Yeah, But
yes.
And then Adrian's like, I'm not doing Bowie without Scrote.
Right. Okay. That's quite interesting, because I know there's the kind of, I don't know if it is like this in reality or in what you experience, but there seems to be the Mike Garson has his kind of like take and his kind of a bit of an ownership with the Bowie world, and then there's obviously other people who've done other bits and pieces as well. So I kind of wondered if there was sometimes a bit of tension of who's.
Oh yeah, well, Mike straight up took our concept and sold it as his, and positioned it as an estate thing, which it wasn't. The estate will not endorse anything. I was the first one to, and like Adrian always goes, well, you built the whole concept of being multiple singers in the shifting show and not taking a break. That whole thing is yours. And so, and getting a state approval, he's like, you broke the market everywhere, and the idea. And
So do you, with the estate?
Personally, I don't care so much, but it's kind of a slap in the face to all the people who worked on the beginning. So,
but with the estate,
I don't really care.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Is that is that Coco or is that Aman or is that kind of the lawyers? Is there a particular person?
Yeah. There's one. I don't want to out who it is, even though it's known. But there's particular one point person who is the executor of the state, and I always run our stuff by them and respect. I don't want to step on their toes. It's not about taking over. We're just a bunch of Bowie fans.
Yes.
Like, yeah, we just want to add to the scene. We don't want to take anything away. So let us know. And we're fans first, even Adrian. Everyone who comes on our show is always fans first. And it's not, our show is about David Bowie. It's not about Adrian Belew.
Yes, absolutely. Though you must
it's
have
not
been
about me.
No, but you must have been very excited when you saw the film last year, Moon Age Daydream, and there's a lot of Adrian in that film and his kind of that particular concert, and you went,
Yeah,
that's quite a nice
I'm
endorsement.
excited for yeah. I was excited for Adrian. That's good, and that's a whole. I mean, that's a cool thing about Bowie. There's so many periods. There's no one. It's obviously it's Bowie who drove the whole thing because he's the only constant.
Yes,
there's not anybody who's the constant. It's him, and it's his. To me, I had to discover. So I had this very unique position over the last few years. Unwittingly, just fell into this kind of thing where I've had a front seat to all these former people, players and producers and press and photographers and fans all over the world, firsthand experience of Bowie inside out. So I'm going to seat there that I don't think anybody else could be, as far as an outsider. I didn't play with Bowie. So for somebody who didn't play with Bowie, but who's a fan, to be in my chair, even today, like seeing how he functioned from the inside out and being privy to conversations and personal things, I've probably seen and related to more people than anybody in the band or any various bands or even close to us, come across so many.
So with having sort of realized this is a good thing, just kind of two bits here. I mean, you've got Miles Copeland, who bizarrely I did an interview with a few years ago when he brought his book out, and he's got this amazing life in music with his early years, managing Wishbone Ash when he was very young, and then IRS Records, and then people like, obviously the Police and REM and stuff like that. Yeah. So when did Miles sort of come onto the scene?
Well, that's a good question. That's an interesting thing. So when Todd called me about doing the US, I thought, well, I cannot do that. That'd be incredible. We had a great shows doing Iceland. We did a private show in LA, and Adrian and Todd together just sounded so amazing. And we kept the format the same. They'd sing about 6-7 songs or whatever, and Todd would play guitar on some stuff. And so it was very ensemble, and then COVID hit. So like, okay, maybe that's the end of this. I'm always thinking it's the end of it. Like, okay, that was a fun, weird, wild ride. Okay, I'll go back. And the whole time I'm releasing my own records and stuff. And it's kind of over here in my world and trying to keep going. And so maybe that's it. And we go along, and then it looked like COVID was going to end. Like, so offers came up like, okay, well, let's do that Todd run now, 21. No, that's never going to happen. And then it came, and when it finally came around to, I think it was in 20, let's see. Yeah, would have been in 21. I was trying to do something like a Let's Dance type of tour with Thomas Stoll involved, and was talking to Sheila E. about playing drums and putting something together. And we really wanted to make a dance pop kind of Bowie pop rock and soul 80s kind of focus. Got shot down again by COVID. Then we looked, then it came across, I heard that through other conversations about another tour going on that said, "Oh yeah, Miles Copeland is producing that tour." I thought, Miles Copeland is producing tours? They go, "Yeah." You know, who knows that? I don't think anybody knows that.
No.
And they go, "You want to talk to him?" I'm like, I don't know. Let me think about that. Then I thought about it for a while. I thought, yeah, connect us. And so we connected, and they were looking for an entity like celebrating David Bowie to get involved with. And they're not putting on the show. They don't want to do the creative. They're not musicians. So they handle production and logistics and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, well, I've been doing all of this stuff with some various help in. I don't want to do a lot of stuff. I thought, well, we don't want to do what you do. Perfect. Yes. And so we hit it off. We've hit it off ever since. That was about a year and a half, maybe 2 years now. And we finally got, we were going to do a big 75th birthday show in London, and then Omicron came up. So we had to squash that. We had a great lineup coming together for Brixton Academy to return there. Had to cancel that. And then we were able to get the Run with Todd up off the ground last fall, and that went really well. And we were going to do it a second leg in spring. Then Todd had some, some schedule conflicts with other tours. So we said, well, let's still do something in spring. Who do you want to do? And I thought, Peter Murphy. And so I reached out to Peter Murphy agent. We talked about doing something in 2019, and he had a heart attack before we could get off the ground. And so talked to Peter, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm all in." So that's kind of where we're at, putting the Peter Murphy tour together.
Right, because you had this massive one in the autumn. We call it autumn, you call it fall. Which obviously was very intense. And then you were just going to roll that into the spring, and then that's kind of been put back into next autumn as well.
In the fall, yeah, because Peter had a medical thing, and so we're like, and he's doing fine, he's doing great and everything, but they're like, "You can't travel. What are you thinking?"
Right.
So
yes,
like, all right, let's just push it to fall. We have some other things going on, so let's push it to fall. Response has been really strong, so that'll be coming up, and that's pretty great. Peter and Adrian Belew playing.
Yes. So is it? I guess you just have to roll with it, because on this one, then with the previous one, you said you had Todd. This one, you haven't got Todd, but you've got Peter Murphy. So do you just think, look, we've got the poster, we've got the lineup so far, but we'll just see?
Well, no, I think the lineup, and like with Todd, I kind of focused on. I try to marry, like I said, I'm a producer as well. So I try to think about the artist and whatever I know about them, research more and match the material with the artist. Right. So with Todd, Adrian, Angela Moore, Royston, Langdon from Spacehog, and myself, we had 5 singers, and they all kind of do different things. And so kind of lean towards pop, rock, and soul with those guys, with that lineup. Yeah. With Peter coming in, we're doing a little bit heavier show when we're focusing on a Berlin trilogy and proto-punk, Ziggy era, and some 90s.
Definitely. You'd have to have Ziggy, really, because Peter, has done such a great version. Sure. Yeah. So do you then get a real kick artistically, a kick of putting that kind of production together, of like,
absolutely,
you get your players, and then you think, right, which songs are we going to put together, and then work on how that flows for the evening?
Yeah, I told a good friend of mine a while ago, I hadn't seen for a while, and I was telling about, say, we're celebrating David Bowie and how I put it together and this and that, and it's really exciting and fun. And he said, well, basically, you're doing what you've always done. I thought, yeah, I guess you're right. That's what I do. So I do it on record, and I do it on concert. I was doing before celebrating David Bowie, I do it with, and there's a whole artistry to that.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm into, I take pride in, and that's why Adrian, sticks with me. And he says, well, you really care about that. It's not about ego or me. It's like, I'm really trying to attend to the show and the music, and even more so than Peter and Adrian. Like, well, what if we do this period of music, who could really deliver it the best we can deliver it? And then on this tour, it's the first tour without Angela Moore. And I brought on instead Eric Schermerhorn, who played with Tin Machine. He's an old friend of mine. I've known him forever. And he played with and everything, but he played with Tin Machine and Iggy Pop. And I thought Peter and Adrian and Eric Schermerhorn and me and Royston, it's like that really works. Then I get the grooving players, Ron Dziubla on saxophone. I always have him. He's an incredible saxophonist representing David's sax playing and David's interest in that sound.
Yes.
Ron Dziubla is really kind of, David. Ron Dziubla to me is more David than anybody else on this whole show.
Excellent. Oh,
and
that's
I
so
would
interesting.
if you think of it as a fan, think about it. In our last show, we stopped and Ron's playing solo sax. And we don't say it, but he's emulating some of the sax playing that David did on Heroes, and then he kind of takes on David. He's really more David to me than anyone on the whole show. Ron Dziubla.
Oh, that's
but it's not
interesting,
said, but it's him. And if you think of Bowie, what I think he would go this show, he'd look at us and go, my guess would he go, you guys, what are you doing? Silly, whatever. What are you doing? And then he go, that sax player, oh, that's the guy I like. I think one of the sax more than anybody. He would appreciate everything. What do you think? You guys.
So this will be quite a different show, a completely different show to the one in last autumn, won't it? The fall. So this.
Every tour is different. Yeah.
Because it's a very it's a very intense couple of months you got here, actually, haven't you? So it's going to be quite interesting.
Yeah.
So then, just without giving too much away, unless you do want to, I mean, so you're going to pick the Berlin trilogy, and then what else are you going to hang on this particular set list?
Well, it's interesting, David. Of course, that's 5 decades of of fan favorites and hits, and so it's a massive carving down to do a 2-hour show every time. And so I have a segment for the first time. We're doing an intermission in the show for the first time ever, and that is so we can set up on the second part of the show for this Berlin trilogy feature, this special kind of segment on that. And then, the other parts of the show are lean towards Ziggy era, but we have some Outside and Earthling in there. And so, it's a scattershot of favorites and hits always, but you never know which one. Every show I'm leaving out massive hits, you wouldn't think, but you go to it and you think it's hit from start to finish, and you don't even realize that all these songs weren't in it because you just can't.
Well, you can't. I mean, do you go up to any kind of pay any sort of respect with Black Star? Have you ever played any tracks from Black Star?
Yeah, we have. The first year I turned down people wanting to sing it, very prominent people. And I thought, everyone's really emotional still. That first tour was on the first year by design, 1 year after his passing on his birthday and everything. The emotions were high. And I thought, no Black Star. It has to be just the right people, and I can only think about 3 people I can even think of that I'd say yes. And one of them I didn't think of, and I said, "Okay, Big Star coming on board. Tell him, well, we've done about 70 songs at this point, and we can learn whatever he wants. You can do whatever you want, And he goes, okay, Black Star. Like, oh man, had to say Black Star.
Yes.
And it was Sting. It was Sting. I thought, oh, of course you'd say Black Star, the hardest one. So do you want a big or small version? Big as it can be. Like, oh. So it just said, okay, done. So I had 24-piece ensembles, strings, horns, then Sting came out. So we did one rehearsal, kind of did a little bit take of our own on it. Sting was playing guitar through the first part of it. He was totally amazing, totally nailed everything right out of the gate. And then he said, yeah, what, maybe an encore, do Lazarus? Like, sure.
Yes, that makes it really
So,
cool.
big show in LA that people still are talking about. So we did 2 nights, big show, multiple stars from all over. And yeah, we did that with him. And then we did in 2018, one of my favorite songs on that record, which always kind of makes me emotional, is I Can't Give Everything Away. I decided to try that, but we did the 9 Inch Nails version of it.
Right.
And we did that, and I had Angela Moore sing it his own kind of way. And we did that in 2018. That was interesting. Yeah, because we referenced 9 Inch Nails, but kind of did our own thing with it. We did that, and then later that year we did Sue from Black Star with full orchestra and choir with Angela Moore. And I think he was wearing, in a particular outfit. And Angela really like dives into the lyrics and what they're about, and really portray them
amazing.
like very honestly and very, very intense on interpreting the lyrics.
Yes.
And so that was pretty intense with orchestra.
Well, I went to see the play Lazarus when it was in London, and it was kind of such an emotional experience because that kind of haunting beat and rhythm, and it's just it just kind of sends a chill through you, doesn't it? Really, sort of.
Yeah, that record.
Look up here, I'm in heaven. I've got scars that can't be seen. It's Jesus. I mean, what sort of, how do you write that? And there was an EP that came out, and again, it's really rocking, particular EP, which came out a few years after that release, and again, it was just like, God, such kind of raw kind of emotions in it. So and you realize that there was somebody who knew they were dying, having writing and recording still in their last year. So it's kind of boggling, really. It's just very boggling, to turn it around. Just on that, it is Dear Old Donny McClaskey. But are there certain songs that you talk about complicated ones, Station to Station, the 10-minute epic, which has that incredible line, if it's not the side effects of the cocaine, and it's got such a drama to that bit. Do you ever play that live? Because I always think that must be a song.
We did that we did that last fall. I shot it by Todd. Adrian always wanted to do it. I thought, well, we haven't quite had the right lineup. Then I thought, Todd, yeah, that'd be good. So I sent it to Todd, what about doing this? And he said, the whole damn thing? He's like, I thought, well, maybe we could do a shorter version. So I tried editing it. I was like, it loses something there. And he said, what about having Angela Moore sing the first part, the big dramatic part, and I'll come in with that, the side effects of cocaine. And so that's what we did. We split it up, the singer. So Angela would start the whole thing. We'd go through it. Then Todd would come out.
Yes.
And do it. And then at the end that they were together. And it was a lot of fun doing that.
It's an amazing song. With the other thing, like acoustic numbers and kind of soft numbers that, Bowie did, especially on that last album he did, Heathen and then Reality, do you do much kind of acoustic kind of ballady numbers, or is it?
We've done it. we did the very first show, the very first song we ever did. It was me on acoustic, another guy here on acoustic, and a singer, a British singer named Karina Round. And it was from that first record, Letter to Hermione.
Oh, Letter to Hermione.
Yeah, Hermione. So it was that. That was the very first song we ever played, and we did it another time. We did it with M. Greiner in Iceland, actually. M. Greiner was on.
God, M, she's so beautiful.
Yeah. So we did that with her, and we've done some other ones. We've done Wild as the Wind numerous times all over the place. Yeah, we've kind of touched everything. And I like to have that element, but I generally like to keep the show upbeat. We play theaters, the big stage with big ensembles. So I want to take advantage of that because that's such a rare opportunity, you know. And like I said, I like the Earth, Wind, and Fire in Chicago, so I like that big stuff. So I want to use it when the opportunity is there, but I also want to use dynamic. So I'll break shows down to something. On this last one, there's a singer on board for a number of shows named Jeffrey Gaines, and he very soul singer, and we did an acoustic version, which we'd done before, of Dead Man Walking.
Right.
With two acoustics. We did that with Gary Oldman and Gail Ann Dorsey before. And a few times. And then we did it again last fall where we did a version with acoustic guitar. I was playing kind of what's called on guitar, I can't think of the name of it. Mellotron. It's a key, particular keyboard and everything. But I was doing the Mellotron sound on guitar and bass and drums, bass with a bow, and acoustic guitar version of Dead Man Walking. So we have our moments, you know.
Yes, it must be, you know, that must be quite amazing because you obviously have occasionally, you know, performed with the person like Ava Cherry, which, you know, also had
Ava's great. Yeah,
a relationship during the Young Americans period.
Yeah, we played Win all over the world actually with string sections. Bernard Fowler always did a really good job with that. And then last year I brought on Ava, and we did it as a duet with Ava and Angela Moore singing Win. And then she also went on to sing Rebel, Rebel with Angela. She's a rocker, man. She's still got it. Ava.
She's still got it.
She's great. She's super amazing. Fun. Yeah. Soulful, rocking, you know.
It is.
I love it.
Absolutely. It's kind of an amazing experience. So do you feel that you're also sort of keeping the flame in one way going with, you know, David's work and in the sense of sort of introducing the music, because obviously we can stream it, we can buy the records, but to be able to still experience the live arena and to see it, you know, the musicians perform it. Is that sort of something that you also feel deep down is kind of important?
I think we all feel that that's important. And kind of going back to what we said with Miles, when he came on board and everything, at that point, everyone was shut down, of course. And coming out of it, I'd got a new agency on board and kind of rebuilding it. And Miles coming on board, and I thought, okay, I've always just been fumbling forward, trying to find my way, like looking for the end of it. You know, natural, enjoying the whole time, but thinking, oh, this will wear itself out. By the time COVID kind of wiped everything out, nobody was doing shows, and then I hooked up with Miles and this agency, and I thought, you know, okay, let's do this for real. Okay, let's take it on. Okay, let's do this on purpose. So that's where we are now, purposely going out there, playing the biggest Bowie shows, there's no one else doing it on our level.
No.
I am not doing it anymore. They've kind of ran their course. Tony Visconti, I never saw his show, but
No.
it seemed to run its course. And so
Yes.
we're up stronger than ever and loving it more than ever. And I'm like, well, I'm doing it. I'm
Yeah.
doing it for a good 10 years. People love it or having fun. I no longer am. I was just thinking on this last tour, and like, I'm not even playing with respect to the other guitar players with Bowie. I'm just playing like I play every day.
Yes, absolutely. But it was interesting what you
Funny
said
enough,
that I was going
fits
to.
in with Bowie anyway. So
Yes, but it was interesting. I'm just on a practical level because there was Woody Woodmansey when he was doing his thing with Tony on their early period.
yeah.
And I sort of spoke to him and just before they were doing the tour, and he said, and I said, how much preparation do you do? You know, and he said, well, we'll probably get together a day or two before the first gig and we'll just go through it and that'll be it. We're fine. So and I thought, wow, that's impressive. But obviously they'll be practicing them a bit before. But he also played, you know, those songs decades before. But how long do you take to kind of get yourselves all ready?
Well, I think with Tony's show too, I think they were specific about early 70s. I think they tried to shift once we were out there doing all kinds of stuff. I saw everybody kind of trying to shift into being inclusive of certain periods. But ours, it's like I said, we are all artists doing our own thing most of the year. And so it's kind of a miracle when we can schedule everything buddy together. And so with that, and I'm always famously overly ambitious. So I try to do certain arrangements and I try to dig deep and tackle difficult material in a really honest way. And so we do charts. I pass them out. We have a lot of conversations ahead of time. I very specifically cast players for the show. And so they automatically are going in the direction of the material. And then by the time we'll do some Zoom rehearsal one-on-one, talk through some Zoom backup vocals. So we're putting in time, writing charts, scribbling out charts, and then putting our own time in quite a bit. And then we all want to make it our own. I'm not trying to be anybody. Nobody else is trying to be anybody. So that takes a little bit of an element. And then we get together and have 2 or 3 days of full rehearsal, maybe 1 day with a band and 2 or 3 with a whole ensemble. And walking in, everyone pretty much has everything memorized. I think it's important to memorize everything.
Yes.
And so walking in, we're pretty far along.
Yeah.
You know,
so you have a couple. Would you say you have a couple of really intense days before that first date on the 10th of October?
Yeah, 2 or 3 days. You know, we actually might need to expand that now that it's becoming more of a legitimate effort out on the planet and everything. I think we're going to expand that to 5 days. I want to get production things. I'm always thinking about beyond the music.
Yes.
You know, how to feature this and somebody be over there and, you know, get more into it, production and lighting. I write out a whole bunch of lighting cues for the whole show and then I meet with the light, you know, there's all of that stuff. So we want to get more time to everything and we continuously want to step up the show.
Yes, absolutely. But
so,
do you, I mean, you know, with everyone coming together, do you have a little bit of anxiety as well as like, God, I hope everyone has done their bit and I hope everyone's vocal's good? And
oh no, because I'm only picking super pros that I know are going to walk. They're going to do that anyway, and then I'm going to walk and talk them through it ahead of time. Even we're going to talk about that before they're even hired. So picking them because I know they'll do that anyway, and then secondly, we'll talk it through to make sure we're on the same page. So coming together, no, it's just fun. And, you know, all of us, we've all been doing music on the pro level, touring and concerts for years and years and years. So coming together is just joyous. It's fun.
Yes. Well, it's
like I said, we're fans first, so we get together and we're playing Bowie music.
Yeah, well,
I'm playing with Adrian Belew. I'm playing Bowie music with Adrian Belew.
Yes. Well,
that's what I started in music doing, and I watched getting Peter on Murphy. Like, I'm going to go out and play Bowie music around the world with Peter Murphy and Adrian Belew, who are bigger Bowie fans than me. Like, how could that even be?
Yes. Well, absolutely. I mean, I just wondered if you were, well, I would imagine that side of it, but also just that thing of like, God, have they still got the voice? Have they sort of done the rehearsing and practicing, and have they, that kind of slight, like, looking at each other going, oh my God, the voice is gone, or, oh dear, that's not sounding so
well,
good.
There's always moments. So like somebody put up something I saw online of Todd cracking during Life on Mars. I'm like, oh, well, sure, go ahead, pick out like 20 seconds. Todd nailed everything. He sounded great. And he had laryngitis. Right. And they got right on the moment that it was like, okay, he had realizing he's got to take time off. So he didn't play like 3 shows after that, came back strong. Like, come on, you pick out like a minute. We just did, how many shows? They got 1 minute to focus on his voice cracking and him trying to push through, that happens. Whatever. That happens to everything. Happened to Bowie.
When I went to see Bowie at Glastonbury Festival in 2000, I mean, he'd had a bit of a scare with some sort of laryngitis or some issue with his throat. It was like, is he going to turn up on the Sunday night? And he did, but I could tell that there seemed to be a little bit of like, he went into Wild is the Wind, and it was like, okay, that sounds good. And then I think he kind of was like, yeah, I've got it. It's fine. I'm going to be okay now. We can enjoy it. But there was that.
I feel mostly that doesn't happen because of the level we're working on, but it does happen to everybody. Whatever. Yes. I mean, Adrian went out with Sound and Vision with David. Adrian ended up singing a lot of David's lines, and Adrian switching to the lower line. I mean, David switching to Adrian's lower line on the shows. People didn't even notice, because Adrian's a soaring singer anyway. So, but whatever, it happened. It does happen, but everyone's coming in gun ho, everything learned. I've been back with Peter multiple times about stuff and before, about performance things before.
Yes. Fingers crossed everyone's going to be 100% fit and well. So between now and then sort of September, end of September, when obviously, do you have other projects that you'll be doing and working on throughout the summer and other?
Oh yeah, well, there's a couple of different things. We're actually working on some other shows this summer that'll be announced for celebrating David Bowie, and outside of that, I'm producing a couple records. One's like almost, I don't know, can't describe. It's kind of a children's fantasy theater piece,
right?
Way. And then one is a friend of mine, a Grammy-winning world music artist out of Texas. It's Latin stuff and all kinds of different kind of world music things. And then I have my own record, a record that just came out called Magnificent Bastard. Be sure to check that on Spotify.
Yes.
Came out recently. And actually, I was listening to your podcast music and enjoying that station. I thought that was really great. And I think Magnificent Bastard fit right in on there.
Oh, because
there's Jack White elements to it, and it's kind of coming from that angle.
Well, yes.
Check it out.
Fantastic. I will.
I'll send it to you, Mike.
Yeah.
So that I'm always putting out records and playing shows. I think we're going to do another Miles Davis show of Electric Period of Miles soon, maybe even a few dates on the road. And then I'm going to start a new record of mine.
Yes. Is it Tutu, the one that you brought out in the 80s that was particularly, is it that one?
No, the period that we focus on in this is 69 to 74.
Right.
Which is Miles when he first went to electric, and he had John McLaughlin So here you go. I started with John McLaughlin, inspiring me when I was 16. I'm playing his stuff around now too.
Is that the post Bill Evans stuff then?
It's before Bill Evans, the sax player.
Oh no, who's the keyboard player he did on Kind of Blue?
There's Bill Evans. That's Bill Evans too. There's a keyboard player. There's a piano player who's a big legend. Then there's a saxophonist named Bill Evans who I went to school with.
Right. No, I'm thinking of the other Bill Evans.
Yeah. Yeah, it's after that. So it's 69. It's Bitches Brew era, if you're familiar with that.
Time, the reggae guys, and it was a really good album that Miles did during the 80s. I have to revisit it really. I think it was called Tutu. Is it called Tutu? God, I've blown it. Have I frozen?
There you go. Came back. So, but yeah, I can send you a couple links of some of the records.
Yeah, do, because it's always good to sort of hear this stuff. And yes, Tutu. It was 1986. That was the album. I remember my boss had a copy and we played it all the time. So,
okay. Yeah.
God, that's such a great cover. Anyway, yeah, do send me any links and anything. That would be fantastic. And yeah, so it's Spotify. It's easy to find. Do you have a Bandcamp page as well?
Yeah, Scrote Music.
Scrote Music. There you go. Can't miss it.
ScroteMusic.bandcamp.com. Magnificent Bastard is on there. There's a record experimental electronic duo I have with a great drummer from Berlin, old friend of mine from the States. Who works with Trevor Horn a lot, and he's going to be out with Seal. He's done a lot of Seal and Air, and we do a duo that's pretty out there.
Yes.
Then have a music and jazz, piano stuff.
Do you ever sort of float through Vegas? Because I always notice all the places that you play, but I never see Vegas. I always think, oh, that's amazing. You never go to Vegas to do any shows there.
Oh yeah. We've played. I've played stuff there. Let's see, celebrating David Bowie. I think we did a show at Brooklyn Bowl in Vegas at one point. It's starting to all, blur together.
Yes, I would imagine.
The venues,
another day.
Even the venues.
But look, thank you ever so much for this. This has been really amazing. And just, it just sounds like you've got the best kind of project and concept and sort of love of David Bowie, which is just fantastic. So like I said, it started, my first single and first love was Bowie, so he's always been with me ever since. So there you go. A massive
it's definitely with David. It's an honest effort of trying to honor him.
Yes, well, I think you definitely do actually.
Doing it with the realm of us, of who we are. So.
And yes, keep the flame burning. That's what we say, don't we?
We'll do.
Yeah,
and hopefully we'll see you over there sometime.
God, that would be amazing. But yes, look, take care. Have a lovely day, and see you later. Take care. Thanks a lot. Bye. And that is the interview over, or the end of the interview, should I say. A massive thank you to Scrote for giving me the time for that. If you want to know any more information, he's got a very good Facebook page with lots of information on, and also, just Google. You'll find it in the way. But he's also on Instagram and various other places, so you'll find out more about that tour. Anyway, this is the C86 Show. If you want to contact me, you can on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, just do C86 Show. Also, these have all been archived, interviews that is. Find those on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify. It's true, just do C86 Show. There's lots of them, a load of them. Anyway, look, have a great week. Stay safe.